What if I told you that the real secret to beating Wall Street isn't some crazy complex algorithm, but just your own common sense? Today, we're going to dive into the playbook of an absolute legend, Peter Lynch, and see how his surprisingly simple approach can give regular people, like you and me, a serious edge in the market.
But before we get to him, let's start with a kind of uncomfortable question. What if the biggest thing holding you back from making money isn't the market itself, but that 3-pound chunk of gray matters sitting between your ears? It turns out we might actually be hardwired to be pretty terrible investors.
So, what's happening up there? Well, this cool new field called neuroeconomics gives us a clue. See, we've basically got two brains fighting for control. There's our ancient emotional brain. That's the one that screams, panic, sell everything when the market drops. It's all about fight or flight. And then there's our newer, more reflective brain, which handles all the logic and reason. The big problem? When money's on the line, that emotional, impulsive brain often just shoves the logical one out of the way and grabs the steering wheel. And the result of that internal tug of war? We fall into these super predictable and usually very expensive mental traps. Our brains get this little jolt of excitement from trying to guess what the market's going to do, which leads us to buy high and sell low. We see scary headlines and get spooked into selling right at the bottom. Or maybe we get one lucky win and suddenly we think we're a genius. Sound familiar? Yeah, I thought so.
Okay, so how in the world do we fight back against our own biology? Well, our guide for this journey is Peter Lynch. He's an investor who became a Wall Street icon, basically by figuring out how to sidestep all these psychological hurdles. So, why is he a legend? Honestly, it kind of boils down to this one absolutely staggering number. For 13 years, from 1977 to 1990, while he was running the Fidelity Magellan Fund, Lynch delivered an average annual return of 29.2%. To put that in perspective, that's more than double what the S&P 500 did during that same time. Just incredible.
That crazy performance took a pretty small $20 million fund and ballooned it into a $14 billion giant. It's wild. By the time he retired, it was estimated that 1 out of every 100 people in America was invested in his fund.
So what was his big secret? Well, it all starts with this pretty radical idea. Lynch was convinced that the average person actually has a built-in advantage over all the so-called pros on Wall Street.
And that advantage? It's all captured in his most famous principle, his golden rule: invest in what you already know. This was his simple, powerful antidote to all the confusing jargon and emotional chaos of Wall Street. The real beauty of this is just how simple it is. I mean, think about Lynch's own famous example, Dunkin' Donuts. If you start seeing news stores popping up all over your city, and every single time you go, the line is out the door, well, you don't really need some analyst in a skyscraper to write a 50-page report telling you that business is booming, right? You can see it for yourself. That's the power of common knowledge. This is what Lynch called your edge, If you're a doctor, you've got an edge in understanding new medical tech companies. If you work in retail, you have a front row seat to see which new brands are just flying off the shelves. The point is, you can spot these big trends in your everyday life way, way before they ever become a headline on the news. But, and this is a really, really big but, your edge is just the starting line. It's the tip-off. Lynch was absolutely clear on this. Invest in what you know is not a free pass to skip your homework. Think about it. You wouldn't just buy a house because you like the color, would you? No! You check the foundation, the plumbing, everything. You have to treat buying a piece of a company with that exact same level of care. So, once he used his edge to spot a company that looked promising, how did Lynch turn that observation into a smart investment? He needed a tool, a way to make sure he wasn't paying way too much for it, and his solution was a brilliant strategy he called GARP. GARP, it stands for growth at a reasonable price, and it's this awesome hybrid approach. It's like taking the best of both worlds. You're hunting for those exciting, fast-growing companies, but you're also using the discipline of a value investor to make sure you're not overpaying for that growth. And to do this, Lynch used his favorite little metric, the PEG ratio. It sounds technical, but it's actually dead simple. It's just 3 steps. First, you find the company's PE ratio. That's basically what the market is willing to pay for its profits. Second, you figure out its earnings growth rate. How fast are those profits actually growing? And then you just divide the first number by the second. That's it. And this is why that little calculation is so powerful. Just look at this. You've got 2 companies,
A and B. They both have the same PE ratio, 30. So on the surface, they look equally expensive, right? But now let's factor in the growth. Company A is growing its earnings at a blistering 40% a year, which gives it a PEG ratio of 0.75. Company B, though, is only growing at 15%, giving it a PEG of 2.0. For Lynch, a PEG ratio under 1.0 was like a big, bright green light. It was a sign that you were getting all that amazing growth at a fantastic bargain price.
Now, beyond just the numbers, Lynch believed that every single stock has its own story, its own personality, if you will. And to figure out that story, he came up with this really simple but brilliant framework for categorizing any company you might look at. He basically sorted every stock into one of 6 buckets. You've got your slow growers. These are the big, old, mature companies. Then there are the stalwarts, giants like a Coca-Cola that still have a bit of growth left. Then you have his favorite, the fast growers. You also have cyclicals, which go up and down with the economy. Turnarounds, companies that have been in trouble but might be making a comeback. And finally, asset plays. The key is, once you figure out which bucket a stock fits into, you know what kind of behavior to expect from it. And his absolute favorite category? Oh, it was the fast growers, hands down. These are those smaller, more aggressive upstarts that are growing at more than 20% a year. This, he said, is where you find the 10-baggers, a term he actually invented for an investment that grows to 10 times what you paid for it. But here's the thing, not every stock in your portfolio is supposed to be a home run hitter. A stalwart, for example, isn't going to grow like crazy, but it's a solid, stable player that can protect you when the economy gets rocky. A cyclical, on the other hand, like an airline or car company, is all about the economic cycle. Its profits go way up and way down. With those, timing is everything. So knowing the category tells you exactly what role that stock should be playing for you. So let's bring this all together. What does all of this mean for you, right now? Well, Peter Lynch's entire philosophy is about empowering you, the individual, to take what you uniquely know and turn it into a real, actionable investment strategy. Which brings us right back to you. So, what is your edge? Are you a software developer, a teacher, a mechanic? Do you have a hobby maybe that's made you an expert in some weird niche industry? Whatever it is, that's where Lynch says you should start looking. But before you dive in, Lynch had this simple 3-question test you should ask yourself. First, do I own a house? What he really means is, have you ever done really serious, deep financial research before? Second, do I need the money? Because if you might need this cash in the next few years, the stock market is absolutely not the place for it. And third, and this might be the most important, do I have the personal qualities? Do you have the patience, the stomach for risk, and are you genuinely willing to do the research? Because let's be crystal clear, this is not a get-rich-quick scheme. Lynch always stressed that his biggest, most successful investments took years to play out, sometimes 3, 5, even 10 years. In his system, patience isn't just a nice-to-have, it's an absolute necessity. It is your greatest virtue. And that brings us to our final thought for today. Peter Lynch's most powerful, enduring lesson is simply to open your eyes and pay attention to the world around you. The next huge investment opportunity probably isn't buried in some obscure financial report. It might be at your job, at the local shopping mall, or it might be that product you and all your friends absolutely cannot live without. So the real question is, what 10-bagger is hiding in plain sight in your life?